Traditional strategies, they don't work anymore.
AI is making decisions faster than we can understand them.
Everyone's selling answers. Nobody has the truth.
Disruption isn't coming. It's already here.
Who's willing to cut through the bullshit?
Outwired.
Scott,
Yes.
did you know that the U.S. government deliberately encourages private campground development in strategic rings around national parks and military installations, not for tourism, but as early warning population buffers?
I did not know that.
It's true. I read it on the internet.
Well, there you have it. Okay.
Think about it. This is what AI says. Campgrounds have transient populations that naturally fluctuate with seasons. They're located on major transit corridors near federal land. They have their own water, power, septic infrastructure, and they generate constant real-time occupancy data that flows through reservation systems the government could theoretically monitor. So why does the federal government, through the USDA and SBA, make it so easy to get financing for campground development near federal land compared to other small businesses? KOA was founded in 1962, the same year as the Cuban Missile Crisis. Coincidence?
Yes.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah, because it was the same year as the World Fair in Chicago, and that's why it was founded, because it was so people would have from the Pacific Northwest traveling through Montana would have a place to stay.
Or was it a cover for the Cuban Missile Crisis?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to stick with my answer.
I think you're wrong. I don't believe in coincidences. I don't know what to tell you. Recreation.gov centralizes booking data for every federal campsite in America into one system. Who else has access to this data? Nobody knows. Why did the Army Corps of Engineers become one of the largest campground operators in the country?
Why?
Yeah. This is all part of the same conspiracy theory that's obviously got to be true.
I don't know. I know that they obviously build a lot of infrastructure projects and stuff like that.
And cell coverage mysteriously improves near campgrounds faster than surrounding rural areas.
Is that really true?
Together clearly leads to the U.S. government deliberately encouraging private campground development to spy on us all.
I would say my answer to that would be that's more like free market, because near a campground, a landowner is going to put up a cell tower because they get leasing fees from that, because they know that there's going to be a lot of people tapping into it.
And that's what they want you to believe. Just like KOA was founded because of the World Fair. You fell for it.
Call me a dupe. I don't know.
I don't know what to tell you. That's what we got. And then there's the other one. Do you want to do one more?
Sure.
Did you know that campgrounds are FEMA staging zones?
I didn't know that, but when I think about it, it would kind of make sense.
Every major private campground in America was pre-mapped by FEMA as a civilian relocation and containment site. The entire modern campground industry is a quiet public-private partnership to maintain thousands of ready-made detention infrastructure points disguised as family vacation spots. Think about it. Full hookup RV sites are pre-wired grid housing units. Water, sewer, electric already done. You could relocate thousands of people overnight with zero construction. Every campground already has a check-in gate, a registration system that collects IDs, and defined perimeter boundaries. It's a processing facility hiding in plain sight. Wi-Fi and reservation systems mean the government already knows exactly how many bodies each property can hold at any given moment. Why do building codes for campgrounds require those specific road widths? Because they match military vehicle specs. Exposed loop roads with numbered sites, that's not campground design, that's barracks layout. The 2020 COVID quarantine sites, where did several states set up? RV parks and campgrounds. They didn't improvise that, they activated a plan. Exposed Walmart parking lots allowing overnight RV camping, secondary overflow nodes in the network. Why does every state have different campground licensing requirements? Because each state's emergency management agency customized the specs to their regional relocation plan. The next time you check into a campground and they scan your license plate and ask how many people are in your vehicle, ask yourself, who else is getting that data?
Yeah, that's a stretch. It's a stretch.
Is it though? Is it though? Maybe
think
the smart people believe it, Scott.
Well, they can believe that. It's not at scale, and it assumes. I mean, let's just put it this way: you've met enough campground owners in your career. Do you think they would be a part of something nefarious like that and keep quiet?
Someone is doubting that campground owners would keep quiet about that on a mass scale and thinks you're full of shit. It's a valid argument. They don't have to know. That's the whole point. The beauty of the theory is that campground owners are unwitting participants. Nobody pulled them aside and told them the plan. The government just wrote zoning codes that happen to require military spec road widths, created SBA loan programs that make campground development suspiciously easy, built federal campgrounds through Army Corps as the template that every private operator copied, and let the free market do the rest. The owners think they're entrepreneurs. They think they designed their loop roads and gate systems and check-in procedures, but they're all building to the same spec because the regulatory framework guided them there. Every county planning department hands you the same playbook, and nobody questions it because that's just how you build a campground. And the few who are in on it, they're the ones who get mysteriously fast-tracked through permitting. Ever notice how some operators get approvals in weeks while others fight for years? Now you know who's cooperating. You're telling me in an industry where 80% of owners can't figure out how to answer a Google review, they're going to organize a mass whistleblowing campaign? These people can barely keep their pool chemicals balanced. They don't need to be silenced if they're not paying attention. Rebuttal? Do you have a rebuttal? I feel like Claude's going to win this, but you can try to rebut.
My rebuttal is that it assumes a level of intelligence by our government and military that just doesn't exist.
It assumes a
the
level
other
of
thing
intelligence
is
by
that
our military
scale.
and government that just doesn't exist.
That it would have to be at scale, and campgrounds aren't. The scale isn't big enough.
Campgrounds, what?
There is enough capacity at campgrounds to really hold the number of people that you would need based on those scenarios.
I bet you Claude's going to have a good answer. Perfect counter arguments. Good job, Scott. That's a great thing. You're right. The government can't execute anything well. That's actually what makes this more believable, not less, Scott.
Oh, okay.
Look at the system. It's a half-built, underfunded, poorly maintained patchwork of sites that don't actually connect to each other with no centralized command structure. Does that sound like a competent conspiracy, or does that sound exactly like what the government would build? This isn't a James Bond villain plan. This is a GS-12 at FEMA who wrote a contingency doc in 1974 that nobody's updated since. The infrastructure exists not because it works, but because some bureaucrat checked a box 40 years ago and the funding never got cut. On capacity, you're not thinking about it right. Nobody's relocating 330 million people. This was never a plan for everyone. This is a plan for continuity of governance to your people and essential workforce. You need maybe 2 to 3 million. There are over 900,000 campsites in the U.S. Average 4 people a site, that's 3.6 million beds ready tonight with zero construction. You and I aren't getting a site, Scott. We're the ones that they're keeping out. The gate works in both directions.
It's yeah, yeah. I don't know. What Claude's gonna do is shoehorn this in regardless. That's that's the bottom line.
Maybe Claude's going to convince you though. What if Claude could
But
convince you?
this is this is why conspiracy theories are always um they they always continue. That because you can always find an argument that, and that's why they become conspiracy theories, because there are always arguments that you can find to fit the narrative. It's you have what you have is you have something that exists already, and then what we're going to do is kind of fit a narrative inside there regardless, and that that's why no,
So you're
there's
saying
something.
it's possible.
I'm not saying it's possible. It's not. It's not at all.
Well,
It's
it has to be. It could be. So you're saying there's a chance from the Dumb and Dumber movie.
right. There's a chance.
There's a chance. You can't prove it's not this. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a conspiracy theory, right? Is it likely? Of course not. But it could be.
There's a Cheers episode for people who remember that show where Cliff goes on Jeopardy, and the final Jeopardy question, he was ahead by like thousands and thousands of points, and it's like the only way he could lose is if he did something really dumb. And Alex gave him a question. It had three people, it's like, what do these three people have in common? And Cliff didn't know the answer. So what he said was, who are three people who have never been in my house? And so you see, it's like you can find an answer to fit it, but is it right? Does it make sense? No, it doesn't.
But it could be.
And technically, Cliff Clavin was right.
It sounds crazy, man. I think you're full of shit.
We have Jason chatting with us here.
Jason's chatting with us about the conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what a site operator on a FEMA cooperative list would say. What's Jason say? Well, that's a weird overlay. How did you do that, Jessica? No, we'll turn that off. That apparently doesn't work. Yeah, click just one of them. Yeah. Oh, that's ugly too. They used to have this nicer, so it would show up at the bottom. I think my font thing might be off. Backup plan parks in case of electromagnetic catastrophe. If the grid goes down, AI can hurt us and make us need the backup plan or help us. It depends on the team behind it. They have to tweak the code to make people proof, or else we what? Or else we hold on. It's in. Just leave it there. Depends on the team behind it. They have to tweak the code to make it people proof, or else we all live in the woods. This plan has been the backup since the late 1960s. They were warned. See, Jason's a believer. Jason's a believer.
All right, Jason, you and Claude are on board.
You forgot to ask what? You forgot to ask them to ask Claude how outer space was. Better than the sandbox. It is a space AI plan, having humans tend to the electric grid. If not, there is a backup. What do you think, Scott? I think we should start a conspiracy theory every week on the show.
There's, sometimes with conspiracy theories, there's usually a little nugget of something in there, and something could have happened. There could have been, at some point in time, and then it kind of grows. But, it's kind of like sometimes there's ordinances that you don't know about, and then someone finds out about it and like, oh, for example, when I lived in Phoenix, it was part of our local ordinance that if there was a house fire, like at your house or at the neighbors, they could come in and drop a hose in your swimming pool and use it as a water source. I'm just saying that, these are things you don't really know about until someone around you has a house fire and they're like, hey, they drained my pool to put out the neighbor's fire. So there are things out, that happen that, again, it could be an ordinance. It could be, you know, I mean, I could see campgrounds being used in the case of like a natural disaster or something as
Mhm.
a backup plan, especially in areas that are remote and there aren't facilities nearby, where, so say something does happen out in a remote area, you need a place, to bring people for triage or whatever, or just a place to stay because they're displaced. So things like that could be part of the FEMA plan. Again, in areas where they don't have facilities. I mean, yeah, if it happens, a place that's out and about off the grid a little bit, it would be difficult.
All right. Let's talk about conspiracy theories for now. What happened in your week?
Oh, well, as we're going to talk about a little bit, the camping report came out this week. So that was
The camping. There's more than one camping report now, Scott.
You heard what I said. I said the camping report came out.
No, the KOA camping report.
Which is
the camping report.
It's the camping report. We're gonna take ownership of that.
No longer have a monopoly.
Yeah. You know what? I could get snarky, but I won't.
Feel free. You can get snarky.
No, it's unprofessional. It's unprofessional. It's I invite everyone to the table. Let's have a talk. Let's have a conversation. And I'll tell you what's wrong with your information. So, but
lots of shit is wrong with all of the information.
But that was the big one. I did I pilot tested as you know, Brian, I've been working on some different measurements that I feel like have the ability to move the needle. And I've come together, and it was based partly on our conversation, what I ended up doing because a couple of weeks ago when we talked about participation levels, the more casual participant. And so I did what I call I called the unified measurement, which takes some of these new measurement approaches and indices that I've developed, and I've tested them as well. And I kind of put them together into a coherent, at least it seems coherent, approach to a survey. So I pilot tested it. I went out and I gathered just a couple hundred completed surveys is all, just to see, because I want to put a bunch into it and have it turn out shitty. So, so the bottom line is it came out even with just a couple hundred respondents. It makes sense. It trends the way you would expect, which is good. The magnitude of things is probably off because of the low sample size, but what it tells you is it's the first stage to figuring out what we need to do to get people to be more, more avid, to repeat guests, to go to the outdoors more often. It's the start of a roadmap that I think will help the industry overall, because it's based on immersion in the outdoors, which is one of those things that you and I talked about. We've talked about for months since you were over in Europe, gallivanting around and drinking by stream sides outside your cottage and whatever. And then also, so it's immersion, emotional connection, risk, and kind of end life stage. And it tells you the story of how it's this circular network, if you will, of how a person, the more immersive the experience, the more likely they are to have an emotional connection to their outing, to their experience, which in turn predicts whether or not they'll actually camp again or more often, which results in them seeking more immersive experiences. So it's a positive cycle instead of a negative.
Okay.
if you look at it from that perspective, and the opposite can be true. If you reverse it, it's it becomes this negative spiral. And honestly, as an industry, that's kind of where we are right now, because people are going out for less immersive experiences, which minimizes their emotional attachment, which in turn doesn't encourage them to go out again or more often. And so
Why are they going out for less immersive experiences?
because that's what is it's the low hanging fruit. It's the easiest. It seems
Does it require planning or?
right. It's like, the glamping stuff. And that's one of the things in here that too you can see is that people who go glamping, it is not very immersive. They are not very emotionally attached to their experiences, and they're much less likely to continue or to go on multiple trips and have multiple occasions in the outdoors. So it's again, it was a pilot test. It's the first stage. The next is kind of to ask the questions of why and how do you address that. I mean, I have some thoughts on it, and I think that maybe between maybe now and next week, you and I could kind of collaborate on some of this and use some AI thinking in terms of, like brainstorming ideas in terms of what could the industry do based on this information. And I could feed you the information, and maybe we could come up with something, because I think it'd be really interesting, and it might, because what I'd like to do is engage in a much larger scale study to firm up some of these figures so we have a little bit more confidence in it. But I feel like this is the right path, and it's a way of looking at the information that a lot of people just haven't done.
Yeah, I mean, the more I've played and the data that we're gathering too, the more I've realized that like there's so much sitting out there that just nobody's thought of in this certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got this stat and we've got that stat, but we've never thought about how do we connect those stats together both this way and this way and this way, and like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get there, and what data stats can you slide in the way or out of the way or go into a Y that converge around in the same path? And like I was telling you about this morning about the weather, right? And I brought this up on the Fireside Chat show that just the temperature, when the temperature at someone's home where they're booking is cooler than, and this is a very limited sample size, right? Is cooler than the resort that they're trying to book at, conversion rates at this particular resort were up by 5%. Like a 6% conversion rate, 6.5% conversion rate versus like a 1.6% conversion rate, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you take advantage of that. Like I do, right? But I like you could build a Google Ads campaign that targets people like that uses our data, that adjusts the campaign bids dynamically based on the weather forecast. Like nobody's ever thought about that, to my knowledge, in outdoor hospitality. But weather is such a big part of what we do. And so to your point, like it's going to take people to connect those different data layers together to get people to think outside the box, and then to prove the ROI to them, right?
Yep.
The ROI of thinking outside the box.
Right, and that's what it's all about. I mean, is getting to that point, because people are trying to make decisions. They're trying to make the right decisions. They're trying to figure out how to position themselves, how to market themselves, how to tell their story. By the way, just so you know, I emailed you a copy of the slide that has the image I was talking about on it, just so you can kind of see. It's fairly simplistic, but it gives you an idea of what it is. I don't know if you want to show it or not. You can.
You put it in the chat?
I tried. It wouldn't let me.
Oh. Yeah, Jessica's in charge of that, so. Yeah, I don't have it over here.
Yeah, for some reason it won't. I don't know why it won't let me paste it in there as an image.
You can share your screen if you want. You're allowed to do that, can't you? I think you can do that. Yeah.
Let's see. Here it is. It's just, anyway, this is just a picture of what I was talking about. This is how it works. It becomes cyclical. And again, this can, right now, I feel like the cycle is in reverse.
And it's going, so walk me through the reverse again, just so the audience has clear understanding.
The reverse, I would say, it would start. You start in the upper left under this high outdoor immersion.
Okay, so this is the thing where we're talking about they're doing like the activities, but they're not staying the night.
They're it's based on several factors, but it's how much, what percentage of their time they're spending inside their accommodation besides sleeping. How much of their time they're spending like in an outdoor, like rustic outdoor setting, like hiking in the woods and stuff like that. How much time they're spending, just like in going to restaurants and stores and stuff like that on their trips, and how much screen time they have it. So there's like 5 or 6 different measures that go into this outdoor immersion measure.
You're saying right now we're starting with high outdoor immersion, or
we're starting with outdoor immersion.
Okay, gotcha.
So if we start with outdoor immersion and say, instead of high, put low there. So
Okay.
for many, when they take a glamping trip, this will say low outdoor immersion. And when you follow that arrow to motivation to return, it's
Mhm.
low,
Makes
like
sense.
very low.
Because what's your reason to return? You from your perspective, you saw the inside of a hotel room.
Right.
Very, very few things are different for you. Okay.
Correct. Yep. The emotional intensity is down. It's dampened. They don't have those strong emotional connections and ties to the experience and to the people they were with, and how they felt while they were on their trip. So it's muffled. So it's not amplified. And then the deeper future immersion, which is another measure that's in there, which we asked, which is on your future trips, how likely are you to have a more immersive experience? A little more complicated than that, but that's essentially what we asked. So, and again, they're unlikely to seek that because they didn't have the emotional connection that which you get through the immersion. And then it cycles back to lower outdoor immersion, and again it cycles back around. So in a negative spiral versus the upward spiral, which is where we used to be, where we were, because people would have these more immersive outdoor experiences. That would help them develop that emotional attachment to the experience. And again, that's what brings them back. That's why in the report and Toby mentioned it in her interview about the casual participant, which the outdoor rec groups are finding as well. That's what's going on. They're just not as immersed in it.
But why?
But that's the next question that we need to answer. And that's where this research is leading us. Like I said, that's why this was
What do we think, though, as a starting point? Do we have one? Like, what's our theory or is it hypothesis that we're trying to prove? It's a theory first, right? No, it's a hypothesis first.
Yeah, my hypothesis is that the initial experience that people have is, again, I know I keep saying it this way, but I will continue to do so, which is it's much more sanitized. It's that sanitized experience. It's less immersive. And I'll use immersive instead of sanitized, but it's a little of both. It doesn't have the strong outdoor component. So people are being introduced to the outdoors via
the indoors, almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the outdoors isn't a big part of the equation, and their motivation for that experience wasn't to have an outdoor experience. It was something else. Something else brought them in. So what we need to do is make sure that people out of the gate, because one of the things that for example, and I'll throw a minor stone, but it's not that big a deal. Like, for example, I saw that Woodall's reported a figure from the DIRT report about, it said that minority participation is really high among new campers. And my first reaction is like, Duh, we've been reporting that for 12 years. The problem is the leaky bucket, that we're not retaining people. And a lot of it has to do with that we're not giving people the kind of real strong immersive outdoor experiences, so they don't, get the have those attachments. So if you look at the data from the report that came out yesterday, you will see over time how overall participation levels among non-whites in new campers is very high. It's been very high for years.
We'll look at that in a second. We're going to dive into the report.
But again, it's not, again, being reflected overall from year to year. So that it speaks to this issue that we're not getting people to truly participate in the outdoors in a way that generates that emotion and generates the desire to have more immersive experiences in the outdoors and to continue coming back.
Here's what AI said. The phone never leaves the hand. This is the obvious one, but it goes deeper than people are on their phones. The phone has become the default state. Boredom, the thing that used to force you to notice the river, the bird, the way light hits a ridge, has been essentially eliminated. People don't sit with stillness anymore because there's always a feed to scroll. The outdoors requires a kind of attentional surrender that most people have lost the muscle for. That's number one.
Yep.
2 is comfort expectations have fundamentally shifted. The baseline for what constitutes an acceptable experience has risen dramatically. Air conditioning, memory foam, on-demand entertainment, these aren't luxuries anymore, they're defaults. So when someone goes camping or even glamping, there's a persistent low-grade friction between the environment and what their nervous system considers normal. That friction pulls attention inward rather than outward. Also true.
Yep.
Trips are increasingly performative. A huge percentage of outdoor experiences are now mediated through the lens of documentation. People are composing the Instagram post while standing at the overlook. The experience becomes secondary to the artifact of having had it. You can't be immersed in a place you're simultaneously trying to frame and caption. Nature literacy has declined generationally. If you can't identify a single tree, bird, or constellation, the outdoors is just a green blur. Previous generations grew up with more ambient knowledge of the natural world through scouting, rural living, family traditions, or just less structured childhoods. That knowledge creates hooks for engagement. Without it, nature is scenery rather than story. Itineraries have replaced wandering. Modern trip planning is hyper-optimized. People have mapped every stop, every hike, every restaurant before they arrive. There's less room for the unplanned encounter, the weird side road, the unmarked trail, the conversation with a stranger that creates genuine immersion. Efficiency is the enemy of discovery. The separation between trip and life has collapsed. Remote work, Slack notifications, email, people don't fully leave anymore. Even if they're physically at a campground, they're mentally tethered to obligations back home. True immersion requires a psychological break that most people never actually make. And maybe the most underrated factor, fewer people grew up doing it. Immersion in nature is partially a learned behavior. If your parents took you camping and you spent hours turning over rocks in a creek, you have a template for how to be in the outdoors. A growing share of the population simply doesn't have that template, so they default to the only modes of engagement they know, consumption and documentation. The outdoor hospitality industry is in an interesting position here. The product isn't really the site or the amenity, it's the conditions for immersion. The properties that figure out how to gently retrain guests into presence rather than just offering them more stuff are the ones that will build real loyalty.
Yep. That's exactly right. I mean, that's what it's, and all those things are the building blocks of a generation that's not really aligned with outdoor experiences. It's a and again, because the things were too structured. That idea there, I think, is a big part of that. And as As you may know from the report that we'll talk about at some point, we actually asked about unstructured.
Are you trying to push me toward this report, Scott?
No, but it hits upon
It's
these.
one of
these
many
themes.
reports, you know.
It is the report. So the idea there is the idea of unstructured time is attractive. The question is, will people actually do it? Because there's structure provides comfort, and we've talked about this in the past. That both emotional and physical comfort, and sometimes being in the outdoors and being in the woods is uncomfortable, but that's what breaks us out of our routines. That's what like stimulates our minds and our bodies, and it's just like if we are too if everything is too structured and too sanitized, we lose that. And as you said earlier, it's the inside of the hotel room. It's the same thing, and you don't feel the benefit of it. You don't feel the benefit of being out there because I don't know if we talked about it here or it was somewhere else. I was talking about the idea that it's like for some people they take pride in coming back from a trip and like you're all dirty and
Yeah.
you smell and
I tell that to my girlfriend all the time. Like that, she wants me to pick up the dog when the dog walks through the garage to get in the car when we go somewhere. I'm like, why? The dog wants to be dirty. That the dog is having fun.
Absolutely. I took my dogs for a walk right before coming on here, and you know what they did? They walked through every little side stream and mud hole they possibly could on the walk, and I actually let them. So
Yeah.
it's but yeah, it's true. It's like I think we're kind of hardwired for it, but we use our big brains to override that and tell us we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't play in the mud. We shouldn't turn over rocks. We shouldn't wander around and do spontaneous things or go into a place that has no reviews on Yelp. That kind of experience. It's the rawness of it. It's as one of my favorite authors, Aldo Leopold, said, of what avail are 40 freedoms without a blank spot on the map? And that was kind of like his whole idea of it's still, you need some wildness. You need some, places, some uncharted places maybe to explore.
Yeah, we did this in Iceland. We went, we took a rental car. We landed in Reykjavik. And I had I'm a trip planner, right? So much like some of that was just saying, I don't map out every destination, but I kind of have an idea of here's 5 restaurants we could go to if we're in this little city or whatever, right? So we kind of know, right? But we got in the rental car and I can't remember how we ended up here. I think I just made a wrong turn accidentally. I don't think it was on purpose, right? Because I don't know if have you ever been to Iceland?
No.
So it's just you leave Reykjavik's 150,000 people and the whole island is I don't know 275,000. So everybody's in Reykjavik. Once you leave Reykjavik, it's there's nothing. You can drive for miles and miles and miles, and there's beautiful coast and volcanic rock and waterfalls and just everywhere, right? And so anyway, we leave the airport and we drive down here, and we're gonna do a loop around the kind of bottom of Reykjavik's. It's gonna be backward, whatever, because we're flipped around. Anyway, Reykjavik's here. We went sort of that way around the loop at the bottom of the whatever that peninsula is where Reykjavik is, and we had a place in mind we were going to go stop as our first stop, and I think I just turned too early, and I turned and I went down it looked like there was an Iceland road there, everything's dirt and rock and right, they're not not everything is, but and so we turned off the road and I'm all right, there's just a little deep puddle here, so we drove through the puddle that was higher than our SUV that we had, which wasn't really a big SUV, right? It was a low, a Mazda CX-6 or something like that, I don't know, personal SUV. And then we kept driving through there, and my girlfriend's no, I don't think this is where we should go. There's no signs here. I'm there's probably no signs anywhere in Iceland. This is how, right? This is our first. Literally, we flew here overnight. Didn't really sleep on the plane. Landed at 6 o'clock in the morning in Iceland, and we were driving. We just got in the car and went. So we hadn't gotten to a hotel, hadn't dropped off our luggage, hadn't done anything, right? And then, so we're driving down this road, and there's nothing there, right? And I'm just this has to be the road. There's clearly a road here. I think this is where I'm at, right? And we just kept driving, and then it turned into like these little, I guess not really volcanic rocks, but just like big rocks like this big that we were kind of like veering around like that I would love to do in a Jeep, but maybe not so much in the Mazda SUV that's not really an SUV. And so we had to veer around these things because they were taller than whatever. But like there's no Google Maps listing for where we are. There's no reviews, is my point, right? There's no nothing. I think I drove probably like 7 or 8 kilometers in there, much to her objection. And then finally I stopped somewhere and I'm like, look, like over here, like the wind, by the way, is like, I don't know, 50, 60 kilometers. It's whipping because on the south end of that peninsula is like a huge drop off that like is the coast, the rocky coast of Iceland up there or up there, down there, whatever. And so I'm like, I know the ocean is that way. Let's just go walk and find the ocean. So we just got out of the car and walked. It's like a, I don't know, kilometer and a half, 2 kilometer walk through like 40 kilometer mile an hour wind and rain. But it was really like, it's just, I don't know, like I'm not saying that was even close to anywhere near the top of our list, but it was just interesting to just explore. And that's the point. Like, I don't know that I would have done that on purpose, but it was really interesting and it was an experience.
Yeah. I mean, that truly, that's what it's all about, discovery. And see, you can see how poignant it was because you remember that very clearly, the whole thing. It's like a very memorable part of your trip. So it's
impactful because like if you when you go to Iceland, Scott, and you have to go sometime, like, oh my God, everything's impactful in Iceland. Everything. That was the best part of our trip. So, all right, so let's get to your report in a second. But before I do that, I asked one follow-up question to AI. I said, how long do traditional campground owners have before they're in trouble if they don't adjust? Do you want to hear that answer?
Yes.
The honest answer is most of them don't realize they're already in trouble. The window isn't some future event. It's a gradient that's been compressing for years. But if you want to put rough timelines on the pressure waves, right now it's already happening. The properties that are coasting on location alone are losing repeat visitors to glamping resorts, hip camp listings, and Airbnb adjacent experiences that feel more intentional. They're not seeing catastrophic drops. They're seeing flat or slightly declining revenue that they attribute to weather, the economy, or gas prices. That's the dangerous part. The decline feels explainable, so they don't act. 2 to 4 years. OTA and aggregator dominance tightens. If you don't own your brand, your guest relationship, and your direct booking channel, you become a commodity listing competing purely on price. The campgrounds that never invested in their digital presence will find themselves paying 15 to 20% commissions just to fill sites, which destroys already thin margins. Meanwhile, the consumer expectation gap keeps widening. Guests who discovered the outdoors post-COVID are comparing every property to the best one they've seen on social media. 3 to 6 years, AI-driven discovery fundamentally changes how people find and choose properties. If your campground doesn't exist as a well-structured, semantically rich entity that AI systems can understand and recommend, you become invisible to an entire generation of travelers who don't Google things, they ask. The traditional I rank on page 1 for campgrounds near me advantage evaporates. And in 5 to 10 years, demographic turnover hits hard. The loyal boomer base that comes back every year because they've been coming for 20 years, they age out. Gen X scales back. And the millennials and Gen Z replacing them have zero brand loyalty to a property that gave them a gravel pad and a picnic table. They'll pay more for less space if the experience feels curated and the brand resonates with their identity. The compounding problem is that all of these pressures interact. A campground that's invisible to AI discovery and has no brand and is competing on price against better funded operators and has deferred maintenance and hasn't built a direct guest relationship, that property doesn't gradually decline. It hits a cliff where occupancy drops below the threshold needed to service debt and maintain infrastructure. And then it's either sell or close. The owners who are most at risk are the ones who are currently profitable enough to feel safe. They're doing 70% to 80% occupancy in peak season, maybe 40% shoulder, and they think the model works. What they're not seeing is that every year the effort required to maintain those numbers is quietly increasing, while their competitive position is quietly eroding. The ones who survive without adjusting are the ones who, with truly irreplaceable locations, beachfront, national park adjacent, unique natural features, and even they'll leave enormous revenue on the table. If I had to put a single number on it, a traditional campground owner who changes nothing has maybe 5 to 7 years before the compounding pressures become existential rather than just uncomfortable. But the window to adjust comfortably, to evolve from a position of strength rather than desperation, that's more like 2 to 3 years. After that, you're playing catch up against operators who already made the investment.
So quick, that's the answer. Quickly, you need to adjust quickly. You need to be nimble and responsive.
Yeah,
and jump all over this stuff. But it explains why overall and I'm not going to just pick on outdoor hospitality. Outdoor recreation overall is flat, essentially, and in some respects declining, just because of the lack of repeat participants. It's declining in avidity. It's funny. Some people hate that word, and I use it all the time. But anyway, it's but that's what's happening, and it's been as an industry, we're feeding that monster. That's what we continue to do because it's the low hanging fruit, and COVID was that disruptor that did it. Everybody made a few bucks off bringing in the leisure traveler, the hotel guest, the resort guest who couldn't stay at a hotel or resort, and they decided to go camping or buying an RV or something. And now, as they say, the chickens have come home to roost because the industry then just, instead of getting back to our core or to what, our foundation of what makes us successful and what people like about what it is our product is. Our product is not accommodations, it's the outdoors. And to get back to that is what's required, because if not, you will find yourself in what was it, after 2 years you're gonna be on the outside looking in.
It's going to be interesting. All right, let's take a look at your report. You ready to do this?
Let's do it.
All right, so you can share my screen over here, Jessica. Jessica's distracted on her phone for some reason. I'm not sure why.
She's not immersed in the program.
She's not. Yeah. I think, are you Gen
Too much
Z?
screen time.
Jessica? There was a slight delay. Yeah, there was. I didn't snap my fingers and it wasn't like that. All right, outdoor hospitality steady evolution. Talk us through this, Scott. This is your report. I don't feel like I need to read this. This is your baby, right? So we'll scroll down through. You tell me where you want to direct your attention and talk about.
Yeah, I mean, just as an intro here, you can see, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday too. Incidents, other than COVID, incidence is relatively stable throughout time. We experience organic growth in households because incidence remains relatively high. But you can see before COVID, we were on an upward trajectory already. Camping was becoming more popular. That was driven by millennials. So you can kind of see, and now we're leveled off. Our incidence is actually above what it was pre-COVID. So, I think, on the surface, that's a good thing, as some of the things we just talked about are contributing to our situation. But overall, you can see it just tells this is a snapshot of the story. You can keep moving out.
Where do you think that this goes in 2026, though, is my question. So if we've been reporting on some of the things that we have, like the fact that Gen Z is not sticky, or that, as in your words, I think this is what you said, non-white is also not as sticky, right?
Correct. Yep.
Where does this number go in 2026, if you could predict it right now?
I'm going to say it, based on where we're at right now, is probably, I would say we might see a slight decline. To best case at this point, I would say is we're flat. Okay. I don't see us having a lot of new entrants next year.
And then if nothing changes, where's this number in 5 years, in 2030?
In 5 years, we could be substantially lower. I'd say you might be looking. I mean, look at what 2014 was, 58%. We may revert back to that kind of figure, that kind of baseline. The 2014, 2015, where millennials were really pushing up these numbers and have traditionally throughout time. So we could be back in that territory, which will put us above where we were back then, just because of the organic growth of the number of households. But
Yeah.
it's not where the industry wants to be. We want to be a growth sector.
Okay. All right, where are we going now? My computer's a little bit slow scrolling this thing, but we got active camping
And
households.
this is active. Active just means, did they go camping in the last year? And you can see it's flat. Last 3 years, we're pretty flat.
I know we've talked this through before, but what signifies a camping household? Private camping, RV resort, glamping, all of the above, cabins, BLM land.
Cabins, we don't count people who stayed in a cabin if it was not part of a campground or glamping park. So if you stayed in a yurt or a cabin on your own property, we don't count that as camping. That is not part of this.
That's how we're working for our pricing stuff too. So
Yeah. So that's what camping household is. It's if anyone in the household did it. We do households because we feel it's a little bit more stable. It's a little bit easier to for people to get their heads around, and we don't have to try to count how many people are in the household. Households is much more stable than actual numbers of people too. So because that moves around quite a bit.
I had somebody ask me, I know this is detracting from your report for a second, but Robert Preston brought this up. We were talking about this on MC Fireside Chats earlier. And we were talking about a little bit about what we were talking about, like how do you react in 5 to 10 years if your demographics change or the type of people that are willing to go outside changes. And the interesting question that Robert brought up was like, I would want to see data on how this person has evolved over their life. In other words, were they a camper and then didn't become a camper because they had kids and then become a camper later in life again and then, right? And I told him, like, I would talk to you because maybe there's some opportunity for you to do survey data about that and gather some of that data from generations. Like if you grow up without camping, let's say you're Gen Z, right? If you grow up without camping or that experience, maybe you never get into it. But if you grow up with the experience and you're Gen Z, maybe you get into it for a couple years and then you go out of it and then you get back into it with kids and then you go out of it and then you get back into it as a retired boomer. But does that necessitate an adjustment from the camping standpoint is what we're asking.
Yeah, I love that question, actually. That's something that one of my mentors from the past, Jim Rogers, talked about a lot. We did a survey on this a long time ago. It's not relevant today, but we actually did a survey on this. One of the things that we do have in our surveys, we ask about their experiences. Have they camped on and off throughout the years? And we capture that. It's just that it's not very useful, truly, but I love that idea of doing that evolution of where they started, and you can almost picture it in your mind how you would take a person, they started at this age. One of the things we did ask in this year's survey is at what age did people take their first camping trip? And so we have that information. And
why is that not useful? Sorry, why is that not useful? Because I would think, I'm putting words in Robert's mouth, right? But I would imagine that where he was taking that in his head, partially, fully, whatever, partially at least, is the thought process of like, if I'm a campground owner and I have this person now, right? Let's just pretend I have them at age 18. And then I lose them for 5-10 years because they have kids and the kids are too small and maybe they don't go camping. I mean, this is obviously the reverse of what might happen in real life, right? They're just making something up. Then do I really want to then adjust because I've lost that person demographically if I know statistically they'll probably come back? Or do I just stay the course?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I would stay the course on it because I think the people do. I think they eventually do come back. I think they will.
But then we've just argued against the whole argument we just talked about to change for people.
Yeah.
See,
it's I mean, as a campground owner, it's that person who goes away though is a little bit of a different animal.
Okay.
Just because they in all likelihood, they don't have any skin in the game. They don't own gear, probably. They've never really, attached to it. So, again, as I think about it, going back to our previous conversation, yeah, you want to figure out how to immerse that person a little bit more, to engage them a little bit more, and that if that is your approach, then you should that it should be your assumption that for everyone who sets foot in your campground, that that's what you want to do. Everyone's gonna be a little bit different in what appeals to them, but that should be your goal.
To not have them go on the curve.
Because right, we want them to immerse themselves. We don't want them to go away. We want and come back. We want them to stay. Because that, again, for you, especially as a marketing person, that's the low hanging fruit. That's the person you want to keep because you've already acquired them. You've done all this work to bring them in. Now keep them there. And so I feel like that. What's interesting too is that when I look back at how we originally started to measure some of this stuff too, one of the things we knew back in 2014 when we first did this was that not everybody went camping every year. It was just assumed that there was a pretty big group of people, and I believe at the time it was like a quarter of the people only camped like every other year or every couple of years. They were those people that would plan like one trip a year, and if it didn't work out, we didn't go. And I feel like that's kind of where we are again a little bit. That type of that person who does that. Again, they're not very engaged in the category. They're not super attached to it. Again,
so you're saying we were at 25%, let's call it in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then we went up, and then we're coming back down now?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's an interesting theory for you. Or is it a hypothesis? Whatever. The thing that is very early and has no data behind it. Hypothesis. So, what if we started, and I don't know, camping is super old, right? Like it goes back to Africa and like long before that, right? It's the oldest form of travel. But let's pretend for the sake of our argument that it started in the 1900s, right? Is it possible then that the share of camping, are we talking about households or people?
Let's talk households.
Okay. Is it possible? So you're saying the share of households was 25% ish, somewhere around there in the 60s, 70s, 80s?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say that number of households was 25% back then when KOA was just getting started because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And if I say that 3 times, people start believing it, by the way. I'm just going to sort of sneak that in.
It's going to come up at some point. Yeah.
Tell people like repeatedly, and I'm going to see how many people by November we can get to say that narrative. So KOA is starting in the 1960s, right? And then as a result of partially KOA, but we begin this push to modernize the RV park and to modernize the camping experience, really, right? To create the RV park, to modernize the camping experience, which then created elevated expectations. Not even elevated expectations, elevated experiences of, now 75% of the population was not a camper before. Now I've seen that I can go tent camping and be comfortable, or I can have a Winnebago and be comfortable. So now that starts to inch up. And then I start to see parks that are being built across the United States that are offering amenities. And those amenities slowly increase, and I don't know what order all this stuff comes in, right? But concrete pads and patio furniture and miniature golf courses and swimming pools. And all of a sudden it's more comfortable for me. I grew up without this stuff, but this is exceeding my expectation now. So I'm more comfortable going from 25 to 30 to 35 to 40% household participation in camping because I fit better in this lifestyle. And then it stays there, really, right? It's basically flat at 50%? For a long time, right? Ish.
Yep.
So it stays there because that population still has their expectations that were exceeded by camping and are still matched. So they've already had lowered expectations. They've now had their expectations exceeded, and they're happy and content and comfortable, and their participation thus flatlines but doesn't grow, but it flatlines at a higher rate. Now come the next generation of people who have not had the experience of the pre-patio sites, RV parks, tent camping, Winnebago days. They haven't had that. So their expectations are set at the camping experience being the luxury RV park, right? Or the RV
Yep.
park, right?
Yep.
Of the early 2000s. So then they're seeing, okay, this industry is not changing or evolving, it's just this. So my loyalty to that, my participation in that is not what it once or ever was because I'm the new generation, right? And so now my participation begins to decline now. And the only way that goes back up is if we all of a sudden innovate, adjust, adapt, and change the expectations into something people are like, oh, this is better than what I thought it was.
Yep. And that's exactly, and that's been the pretty much the evolution, over time. And to build on that, to what the original question was about, whether or not people went camping as kids, and so on. It's the boomers took their kids camping, the Gen Xers didn't. So what what you had is the millennial generation being that basically what's propping us up right now in participation, because the boomers were very outdoors immersed. I'll keep saying it, I guess, today because it's my word of the day. And they were the generation that popularized backpacking. It was the boomer generation that popularized, brands, the outdoor brands, and when you see some of these, brands that are still out there that make backpacks and hiking boots and tents and all those products, those really flourished in like the 70s when backpacking and wilderness travel really blossomed. And it was that generation who did it. They obviously got away from it, but they took their kids camping at very high levels. And it's
But that
why.
was also, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that was also a change in experience, right? So that was
Absolutely. Big
they
one.
grew up without the ability to go to an REI or whatever the store was back then to buy the backpacking gear with the water pouches, to have a good hiking experience. Like obviously it's still roughing it and right? It's
Right.
to go backpacking, but the backpacking experience was fundamentally different, which interested them, which raised their participation.
Yep.
And then the
Yep.
new generation is starting at that, and they're like, "Well, that's the same fucking thing. Like that's horrific based on my expectations of." I think it's great, right? But generally speaking,
Yeah, and so those dynamics again that kind of carry over from generation to generation. That's what happens. And if you take your kids camping, there's a real good chance that they're going to camp as adults. If you don't, it may not take. And if you do take them camping or glamping, if you sanitize it too much, you're not going to have people where it really takes, that it really takes hold. Earl from Black Folks Camp 2, he and I have talked about this as well, because what he was finding out too is a lot of young black kids from cities and so on, the camping just wasn't taking with them. And for him it was because one, people, he was like, they're not taking them out with their families and stuff like that, and they're making it the experience a little too easy. They're not really taking them into the outdoors, and so they're like, they don't develop those attachments. And that's that's what we need is for people to do that, and for people to participate in I'm not saying you have to go out and sleep under a tarp, but even if you stay in a cabin or yurt or treehouse or whatever, it's the guest still needs to have a solid outdoor experience while they're there at some level. They need to get to interact with nature and the woods, and if they don't, it's going to be superficial.
all right, where do you want to go?
We can talk briefly about this one, the frequency. Just we've actually already talked about this a lot, where you see that one time a year camper is as high, pretty much as high as it's ever been throughout the survey. So that's part of what we're seeing in the industry, and that's why some campgrounds see camper nights.
The one time of your camper is at 34%, but yeah, last year it was at 37% or 20. Well, 2024 it was at 37%.
Yeah, Yeah. So what we saw is a little bit of a decline in that from the last couple of years.
Okay.
This is one of those things that when we originally measured this, that made me feel somewhat, we always talk about being guardedly optimistic. This is one of those things. It's like, it's small, it's still margin of error, but it's enough that it's like, maybe, just maybe, we might see a little bit of a bump this year. Again, this was fielded in January, so things have changed.
Really? What's changed? Let's get into it. Oh, I'm just kidding. So where do you want to go?
We don't need to talk about this too much. You can see that it's pretty, you can just look at the graphics and it's pretty self-explanatory. We've talked about that a lot. Here the demographic shifts. I think this is really poignant when you look at Gen Z. It's the first time in this survey. Well, Gen Z is the only generation that we've seen a decline in participation of a generation that should actually be growing, that should be aging in. Because each year, like not all Gen Zers are adults. So they should be aging into the camping population. And we should see, just again, organically, we should see them increase, and we don't.
But arguably, could you arguably say that you're right, they should be going up. But arguably, that's not as terrible as it looks, because I look at that and see flat from COVID to now.
Correct. But it's also, there's also 4 years of Gen Zers who've been added since.
Oh yeah, I hear your math. I'm saying I agree with you. I'm just saying it doesn't look as apocalyptic. Yeah.
It's not apocalyptic necessarily. It's soft, as they say.
Yeah.
It's soft. So
the Gen Zers or the data?
Gen Zers.
You don't have to answer that question. Okay, so then millennials, let's look at this. So we had 37. So let's just say we're going flat, and Gen Z is 21 to 25, 13% even. We lost 11% of millennial campers in the same period. We lost 2% of Gen X, and we lost 2% of baby boomers. Is there like a fifth color that should be in there? Oh, silence all the way at the top. Okay, sorry, silence all the way at the top. Okay. All right, so baby boomer we lost.
No, baby boomer we gained
15%.
Baby boomers is the really interesting generation in all this. As more and more baby boomers retire, they're coming back to camping. We lost them for several years. You can kind of see they were kind of
Is the net that they're still retiring more than they're aging out and dying so far?
Yeah, they're still retiring. It's the silent generation that's aging out the most.
So when does that flip for the baby boomers? 5 years?
Yeah, that's probably about right. Okay. I would say within 3 years you'll probably start to see some more erosion there. But the boomers are taking to camping because they're again, cheaper way to travel for them. A lot of them don't, haven't saved for retirement, and so they're out there camping more. But it's also, as they retire, they have more leisure time, and they're out there. They're also what we're seeing is with boomers, a lot of multi-generational stuff. They're taking their kids and grandkids with them, and we've seen a lot of this. And it's an analysis that I'd like to dig into a little bit more at some point, because I think that's an important consideration, the 3 generations, again, with the boomers and the
but so this is interesting to me. Like, we're saying baby boomers were at 28% in 2015 or at 28% now.
Yeah. Yep.
So that also lends itself to like a more spread out gap. But so here's my interesting question though. Baby boomers are what generation? You know this probably off the top of your head.
Right. 1947 to 1964.
Okay. So my question is as people retire as younger baby boomers, is it possible that, just like you're saying, like, I think the older baby boomers probably had more savings when they retired than the younger baby boomers do? Is that fair?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So then, is it fair to say, I think you just did, that the younger baby boomers are more price sensitive than the older baby boomers were? So even though there's more baby boomers in the market now, or the same since 2015, right? For sure, there's more than 2008, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the narrative that we're going to hold up because the baby boomers still want the same thing may not be the same because the pricing of campgrounds is much higher than it was in 2015, 2008. Also, they have less savings. They're more price sensitive. They want to go outside still, but maybe they go to the state parks and provincial parks, federal parks, BLM lands. Maybe not BLM lands as boomers, but hip camps, harvest hosts, stuff like that. So maybe the price sensitivity, because they don't have that big of a savings, is a little bit more fragile than it was 10 years ago.
I would agree with that. I think that is very true. Yeah.
So the safety net that we might think we have looking at 28 to 28 might be there, but it might not be.
Correct. It's a bit fragile. Plus a lot of the boomers are supporting their kids and grandkids too. So are Gen Xers, to a degree. But yeah, it's it's something that again, it speaks to why we need more Gen Zers to camp, because we need some more stability with the younger generations.
What's the numbers? Do you know the numbers? What percentage of 28% is of total boomers?
Oh, like of the boomer population overall? Yeah. I don't.
No, just not really important, but I was just interested to know what 28% in 2015 of the percentage of boomers was. It would be the same because we're mentoring generation, right?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
people die too. So
well, yes, but I was thinking when that came out of my mouth, I think I was thinking like we weren't just measuring the boomers that had retired, is why I was asking that
right,
question.
okay, yeah.
Okay. All right. What do we got next?
This is just age. Well, this is somewhat interesting when you think about how age distribution versus generation. So just so you can kind of see that 2025, since we've been doing this, had the lowest percentage of the youngest set of guests that we've ever measured. So that
From 18 to 34. And even close to 18 to 44, really.
Yeah, it really.
It's not just younger guests. Well, I guess I mean I'm 44 now, so I guess I just called myself old. But like it's 22 in 2019 to 21 for the 35 to 44. So other than that that's still a 1 percentage point dip. So you're down in every category from 18 to 44. That's got to be a problem, right?
It is a problem. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I put this graphic in the report, because I want people to see that. Other than generation, I really think looking at the actual age, the chronological age of the people, is just really important to consider. It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
All right, where do you want to
go? We don't really. We kind of talked about this already. Ethnicity. New campers. We've been measuring this over time. New campers are always much more diverse. Always have been. We just haven't figured out how to keep people interested in camping. So
where's Canada? Is Canada the outside circle or the inside circle? Oh yeah, Canada's the outside circle. That's a little confusing. Is it?
It is. I honestly, I don't like this graphic, and I will say that openly. So I did not do this graphic. So
okay, so Canada's the outside graphic.
Yes.
So in 2025, household intensity among new campers, Canada was 48% white, and U.S. was 57% white.
Yep.
So we're more diversified in Canada?
Yep. Among those new campers.
Which makes sense because we have a lot more open land.
You do, and yeah, you had a real good turnout this year of across the board in terms of it being representative. So I know Canada has a real strong Asian population, right? Like especially in places
In
like
certain,
Toronto.
yeah, I mean, yeah, overall, yeah, but in certain cities for sure, like Toronto and Vancouver. I think Calgary too, yeah.
Yeah. So, and you saw that here, that those new campers, and that's yeah, it's pretty interesting to see. But it was again, Canadians stayed home this last year too, which I don't know how much that contributes to some of this, but pretty interesting. So
Well, you would assume the percentages would be roughly the same.
yeah,
Like because you would assume that most of the people again, big assumption, right? Not really any hard data. But you would assume the people that stayed home would tend to lean more toward the older baby boomer white people, right?
yeah,
Hypothesis only, no data. But okay, all right, we got household income next.
yeah. We this year kind of shows that it's relatively stable over time. We saw we don't have it on this graphic, but during COVID, we had a little bit higher income groups. Overall, if you look at like median household income for both U.S. and Canada, both campers tend to be slightly below overall median. So, which kind of reinforces that notion that camping is a little bit more um, common among lower income categories. So,
But Canada is a little bit higher income. Am I reading that right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
Camping experience. Where do you want to go? We got a lot of pages to get through, and I think we want to end the show a little bit early today because we both have things.
Yeah,
To do.
there's no way we're getting through it. Here you can just see the camping experience. This one, it's not super interesting, but you can see that camped on and off throughout the years. On that, if anyone wants to talk about that at some point, we can.
I think we should just try to. Well, let's try to go through what we can get through, and then we'll finish next week.
That sounds good. Okay.
So, talk to me about camping experience here. If this is important.
What you would like to see here is a solid mix. You want to have your core of like lifelong campers, people that have always camped, and you can see that overall compared to pre-COVID, it's pretty much in line. But started the past few years is pretty high, 57% this past year. That means that's that sporadic camper we talked about as well.
Is there a consistency between what we're referring to as pre-COVID? Is it 21? Is it 2020? 21 wasn't pre-COVID, but is it partially 2020 or is it 2019 or is it
this? Oh, yeah, good question. These results represent that year, the behavior in that year. So 2020 reflects a COVID year, which was 2020.
Okay, so but when you say pre-COVID, we're generally flat. I see 37% in 2019 to 31.
Right. Yeah.
It's not flat. That's 6% down, right?
Correct. And it is being made up for that
in the on and off throughout the years.
Group, or the started the past few years. That's that COVID group who's kind of come and gone.
Yeah, but that's not who we want to make it up with. We don't want to trade a lifelong camper for maybe I'll go this year.
Right.
It doesn't seem like a good deal.
We want more of the lifelong campers. We want that group. We want them to stay. That's our goal. So, again, you can see we were building that base from 2015 even to 2020, where which was still kind of a COVID year, but it was early COVID. But then we kind of dropped off, and hopefully we're rebuilding it.
Well, started over the past 3 years too is down 4% from 2019.
Yep.
I don't like this.
This is a report, though.
The camping companions. This doesn't typically change very much, by the way, over time.
I'm glad this is only one report, and we have the
one
forward too. That's more positive.
The one thing that we see that happened this year.
Ignored that. It's not even talking to me anymore.
It's a function of the more of the boomers. is that fewer campers are camping with children.
Hi, Scott. I love you.
You do not. You hate me.
I have a love-hate.
Camping preference. Okay, what we got?
Here, what you can see over time is this decline overall in tent camping. Again, it peaked in COVID because again, a lot of people were just coming out and they were buying tents and going out. But when you compare it to 2015, it's a 12-point difference between 2015 and 2025. So that's huge. That's and you can see it peaked. Tent camping peaked in 2017 and then again during COVID. But if you did a trend line through that, it would show an overall decline in tent camping. And that, when we to build on our earlier conversation on immersion and kind of the emotional ties and stuff like that, people are further away from the outdoors, and the further they are from the outdoors, the less likely they are to attach. So that to me, and then you look at that 29% that are in cabins or glamping, the highest.
I mean, I look at this. I look at this, and I think we've overcorrected. Like,
yes.
I think there's so many people I talk to who are like, nobody goes tent camping anymore. It's right here. 47% of people go tent camping, and only 19% go RVing. But yet, everything we hear about that's being built new inventory wise is RV.
Correct.
Why? Other than it's more profitable.
That's why.
But there at some point you're going to run out of people, right?
Well, it's one of the reasons why, since I've worked with them at KOA, they've always made sure that each campground has a certain percentage of tent sites to build the base.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that, and it's pretty wild too, because in the research throughout the years, we find tent campers who only stay at KOAs for a number of reasons. That a lot of times they're solo tent campers, but they like having the infrastructure there too. But it is the biggest part of the market. But I agree. The word you used is 100% accurate. We've overcorrected, and it's being reflected in what you see here. That we're having way more people in accommodations and structures that than in previous years. So
well, my other question here is, and we talked about this in the beginning, I asked you the question, is it the same throughout the survey? Is cabins and glamping only cabins and glamping at campgrounds?
Yes.
So this 29% number, you're sure, as much as like you can be sure when somebody's answering a survey question, refers to only cabins and glamping at actual campgrounds.
Yes, and that is the way it's worded.
Okay. I feel like that number could be much higher.
I agree. I would agree.
If we were intentionally going after an audience like that.
Correct. But it is worded that way. It is the way the question is asked. It calls it out specifically that it's at a campground or a glamping park.
Or a glamping park?
Yeah, it could be a glamping park too.
Which could be constituted of just glamping, like 6 tents.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
This
just to be clear, I'm sorry. So it doesn't have to be at a campground.
It's a campground or park. It's not a one-off. It's not an Airbnb. It's not
right. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Okay, that's what I was just making sure, because that's a whole like we were talking about the data I was gathering, and I'm not saying this changes. Like I'm not questioning your survey data. I'm just trying to seek clarity on it because, as you know from the data we're gathering on pricing, there are something like 12,500 private and public campgrounds in our database, but there's another 9,500-ish standalone glamping properties in the United States, not counting Airbnb,
Mhm.
etc. Right? So there's a almost, let's call it almost, really a doubling when you take away private federal campgrounds. There's really a doubling of campgrounds and then glamping only.
Yeah. Yep.
So that 29% then is not just, I don't know how I'm thinking about this, but I think there's more data here. There's something that needs to be unpacked here. I'm trying to get my brain around it, right? But that 29% could be bigger if, for sure, as we said, if we marketed it higher, if we marketed it more. But also that 29% is pretty well representative of the people who want to experience an outdoor accommodation like that
Yeah.
across the market.
I
Okay.
think so. I think so overall.
So still begs the question of why you're only targeting RVs. Not some people aren't, right? But generally, why the extremely large emphasis of what we hear on is on RV when there's clearly two segments that are much larger than it, right?
And RV participation is the lowest it's ever been in this survey.
All right, let's do one more and then we'll call it.
Okay, sounds good. What matters most? This is, we've talked about this forever. Safety, security. That's what people want to feel when they stay at a campground. A lot of people stay at campgrounds because they feel safer there.
Did you break this down into U.S. and Canada?
Yeah.
And was it different country to country?
Not substantially.
Okay, just interesting. Just interested me.
And the cleanliness, issue of the bathrooms. It's like that's the bellwether people use. These results here have been consistent since the beginning of time. This is what people look for. These top two. And then
I'd be interested to see how this percentage moves in 10 years once it becomes standard practice to just deploy a robot, like a little robot on wheels, even not a humanoid, just that cleans your bathroom. And then everybody everywhere has clean bathrooms.
And once that happens, then it will probably go away.
Not
100%, but it'll decline in importance because it'll be just an expected, it's baseline that's what you'll have. So, and then things like recreation and stuff like that. This is, but those first two, it's that's what it's all about. Is just take care of business a little bit, make people feel safe and secure, and then clean your bathrooms for God's sake.
Reasons not to camp in 2025. All right, we'll just pick that up next week. That sounds like a nice negative one we can start off the week.
All right, sweet.
All right, so final thoughts with what we went through. Like, I feel like we had a good discussion, other than maybe the conspiracy theories one, which has not been proven wrong, but probably isn't right.
Yeah, Jason, who left already, didn't like it that much, but no, I thought it was a really good discussion. This is good. I mean, like I always tell people, I like it when people ask questions about the research and the work, because I feel like I need to be able to answer those questions, and if I can't, I'm going to incorporate it into the research the next time we do it. So that it's what I, as a researcher, what I feel makes me better at what I do is by having critical conversations about the work, because if you're not challenged on it, and I would say this in a way that hopefully doesn't come out wrong, but when you mentioned earlier about there being a lot of others, and I say this is the research, kind of jokingly, but I also feel like we purposely go out and seek to have the more difficult conversations and to dig into it a little bit more, rather than just kind of throwing stuff out there and without context, without having that conversation at a little deeper level. So, and I feel like we're in a pretty defensible position overall. And again, I always say, if people want to talk about it, if they have questions, if they want to challenge anything, please feel free. I welcome it.
I'd just rather spread unfounded rumors around the internet.
I know that's how you roll. That's okay.
You are the camping report, Scott. I'm the pricing report. You're the camping report. Two different things, but you're the OG. Nobody disputes it. Well, somebody does, but not me.
They want to. Come at me, bro.
Do it, man. All right. I don't have anything else. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Outwired. We're going to cut it briefly short today. We will see you next week. We're going to talk about all kinds of other things. And eventually we'll get back to AI news, because there's models out there that we were supposed to talk about on the show that we didn't get to. Did you see it with us briefly? Did you see Claude Mythos?
No.
We'll talk about that next week. Claude Mythos, new model from Anthropic that is not generally available. They are holding back on purpose and have given it to 40 large corporations, including JP Morgan, Google, etc., before they release it to the public, to use it as a cybersecurity tool to beef up their security, because this thing can apparently crack into systems like nobody's ever found before.
Oh.
They've given it to 40 private companies to help them protect themselves using the model before they release it to the public in a couple months.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that would be a fun discussion to have. All right. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Outwired. We'll see you later, guys. Peace.